What is going on, guys? It is Trifecta J here with episode 10 of my Kings MyGM, and more importantly, the offseason. It's finally here, and to start off, Steph Curry is the most valuable player of the NBA this year. Also got an achievement, not sure what that was for, but Dante Exum is Rookie of the Year, J.R. Smith, 6th Man, DeAndre Jordan, Defensive Player of the Year, Most Improved goes to Steven Adams, and I got the Executive of the Year. If you're wondering why it's Julio Armstrong, that's just what it came with. I haven't changed it. But all NBA, Steph Curry is your point guard. John Wall and Kyrie are the guards on the second team. And third team, DeMarcus Cousins is a third team all NBA player. I was really happy with that. Hopefully he can continue to improve and maybe make an all NBA first team one time in his career before this series is over. And we had no other players on any of the other All-NBA teams. Stauskas might have been able to make it if he did not get hurt and miss almost half of the year, I think. You can see the NBA Finals matchup is the Hawks and the Thunder are victorious. Somehow the 5th seed Hawks snuck in there. Love to see that, as I am a Hawks fan. But Russell Westbrook is the Finals MVP, putting up 22 points per game. And so you can see the retirements now. Hedo Turkoglu is our player to retire. Some of the big names. Tim Duncan has retired. Kevin Garnett, Steve Nash, Vince Carter's another big one. The biggest one is Tim Duncan. That is huge. We'll have to see how the Spurs move on from that. Paul Westphal, he will retire also. He was an assistant coach for the Nets. 5 players are being inducted into the Hall of Fame. Tim Duncan, Kevin Garnett, Steve Nash, Ray Allen, and Vince Carter. And our owner wants to win a championship next year. I said maybe, but that seems pretty difficult to do. I like the core. Actually, I really don't. We have a couple of good players, but throughout this offseason, we will really go through and I feel like really improve this roster. Our player payroll, we put as much into that and the staff payroll. But looking at the lottery, we had the 7th best chance, or we were projected for the 7th pick, and we end up with the 8th. So we do drop one spot. We'll have to see if that affects the way this draft goes for us. Hopefully it does not. There's a lot of good players in this draft, but now we have to hire some staff people, and we would end up going with Jem Gillum. He was a trainer, and I think we signed him for 3 years. He looked pretty good. It's not, I don't know how big of a deal your staff really ends up playing in this game, but we also, for our assistant GM, we go with Oliver Sanders, who also looked good. Trying to upgrade this staff, because I don't know how much it helps or hurts you, but I feel like it's not a bad thing to have good players or good coaches. And because I spent so much on those people for our staff, we ended up having to go after Matthew Jones instead of one of the top coaches. I even was looking at Coach Bud for the Hawks, but he costs like 10,000 more than we had. And we would go ahead and accept Ray McCallum's offer. And our 3 free agents that we had coming in all wanted to test free agency. I was fine with that. I didn't plan on bringing any of them back. I didn't really like what I saw from any of them. Okafor is old, so he's probably past his prime. And the first pick of the draft is Mario Hezonja, I believe. Not sure how to pronounce that. Jahlil Okafor goes 3rd. Kelly Oubre, one of the players we were targeting, goes 4th. And the 5th pick is Karis LeVert. So with the 8th pick overall, the Sacramento Kings are going to go with Stanley Johnson, the 19-year-old, or the 20-year-old actually, out of Arizona. With our 20th pick, we're going to go with Montrezl Harrell, a power forward out of Louisville. He is one of the guys who, he's a good player. He'll probably actually be a lottery pick in real life. And we also, with our 2nd round pick, went and got Sindarius Thornwell out of South Carolina. One of my favorite players in college basketball, as he plays for my favorite team. But we did not have a lot of cap room with Gerald Wallace's contract still in the book, so we couldn't afford Draymond Green, who was a guy I wanted to maybe back up Stanley Johnson and really solidify our bench. However, we do end up just going with DeMarre Carroll. He is a very good perimeter defender. He can move to a 4. He's a little undersized for a 4, and he's improved a whole lot on his 3-point shooting since he joined the Hawks. And some of the player improvement, one of the players that I feel like will be one of the more underrated people is Eric Moreland. He's a good rebounder and he's a good post defender. He can block shots. He'll probably be most likely our 5th or maybe even 6th big man, because I feel like this team will go pretty deep. And we're moving on to training camps now. Ben McLemore will go to perimeter defense, and we would also end up sending Stanley Johnson to perimeter shooting, which is that's probably the biggest knock on him as a player. He's not a great shooter. He's incredibly athletic. He's a great defender. Not sure about like his rebounding or anything. He's not a great playmaker, but he's also a small forward, so it's not a huge deal. DeMarcus Cousins goes to big man defense camp to help him down low, as we are not a great defensive team. If we can improve, Stanley Johnson is good. Ben McLemore, he can definitely become one, and we would end up sending our entire team to the free throw camp, as I had some VC to burn, and it only improved them all one. You can see Gerald Wallace has really decreased. He's a 47 free throw shooter. He was never great before, but his stats have even decreased more than they were. Montrezl Harrell, 70 now. And we would send Ray McCallum to the combo guard to improve his ball control, moving shot mid-range, and his passing accuracy. I didn't really know what to send him to, because there was a couple of guys on our team that I feel like fit a certain role. But Eric Moreland goes to offensive fundamentals. He is very bad at scoring. He misses a lot of open layups, and DeMarre Carroll goes to rebounding. In case we move him down to the 4, I want him to be able to get rebounds and not just be left hanging out dry. And our owner has some goals. We go through these pretty quick. He wants us to sell out 23 games. I said, well, we can do that. He also wanted us to win 19 home games. I also said we can do that. And this is the first blockbuster trade of the offseason. Gerald Wallace, Darren Collison, Ramon Sessions for Drew Holiday, Jeff Withey, Darius Miller. Ramon Sessions was a guy who was on our team. He didn't even play last year. And I love the acquisition of Drew Holiday. But then we go and flip Withey and Miller for Briante Weber, who will be our 3rd point guard. I really like what I saw out of him, out of his stats. And we would trade Carl Landry and Sergei Karsev for Zach Randolph. That is a lot of moves, and I feel like this is a completely different team. I think there are 6 players who are still on the team from last year at the beginning, and it's just a complete revamp. And I really like what I've done with this team. I would love to know what you think. We're going to go through some practice to really introduce you to our new players. So I'm going to break down the moves that I made. The first one, we got Drew Holiday as our feature point guard. Darren Collison, he to me is a backup. We traded Ramon Sessions, who didn't play at all last year. And we also traded Gerald Wallace to make the salaries match. He had declined a whole lot. We pick up Drew Holiday, like I said, who will be our starting point guard this year. And also Jeff Withey and Darius Miller, both 2 players that I couldn't care less about them. And then we ended up flipping them for Briante Weber and Zaza Pachulia. Briante Weber was a guy who I had been scouting, and he's a lockdown defender. He has great steal stats. I think he's close to the all-time NCAA steal record. And I wanted to pick him, but I didn't have a pick because I went with Thornwell, and he ended up getting drafted like 25th overall, where I was just going to sign him in free agency, but we ended up missing on that. So I ended up picking up him, and then Zaza Pachulia, he's $5 million of basically worthlessness because he's old now, he gets injured a whole ton, and that is something that we might look to move, or it's an expiring contract, so we might be able to do something with that money in the offseason. Moving on, we traded Carl Landry and Sergei Karsev, 2 players. Sergei Karsev had pretty much become obsolete for us and unnecessary because we had gotten DeMarre Carroll to back up Stanley Johnson, and we have Stauskas at shooting guard. Shooting guard's full, he can't play there. And then starting at small forward is Stanley Johnson. So there was no room for him. And then Carl Landry, he can't play defense. He's an offensive power forward, but he was getting paid a whole lot for a guy I really just wasn't a huge fan of. And I really like this team. I feel like it's definitely not a complete product. Zach Randolph, the other trade that I made, forgot to talk about that one. It was to get us or that's who we traded Sergei Karsev and Carl Landry for. So he will be our starting power forward unless Montrezl Harrell really shows something and takes his spot. Randolph is an older guy at this point in his career, which is it's a small issue, But other than that, he might be a good, I think he's on a 2-year contract. We might look to flip that next year. And he will be starting this year. He's a good post player. But I hope you did enjoy. Get ready for the first game of the season, because I'm out.